So let's get into our first team here that we're going to talk about. It is a young team. It's a team that has four rookies on the roster, um, and then almost everyone on the roster. Really, they really have like two veterans on their 15-man squad. That's about it. And of course, this is the Charlotte Hornets, recently sold team. Michael Jordan is no longer the majority owner of the team. So new ownership group tends to mean a team is might be interested like in getting into the trade market, making some moves to be competitive right away, and that could happen, but it hasn't happened yet. And this team is so young that we still do. Me and Ian both see them as a couple of years away still. So let's really quickly just go over what happened this offseason in Charlotte land. They did draft Brandon Miller, number 2 overall, coming out of Alabama. He was a guy that I was really high on going into the draft. And then they drafted Nick Smith late in the second round out of Arkansas. He was a guy who fell due to highly regarded high school prospect, but he had injury issues and missed about half the season in college, his single season in college, and didn't look great when he was on the court. But again, he was recovering from injury and definitely didn't look like the same athlete that he was when he was in high school. And then they drafted Amari Bailey in the second round. He was another pretty highly regarded high school prospect. And he didn't get a ton of playing time in UCLA, but he did play more later on in the year. And this is a veteran college team that he was on. So I wouldn't like hold his college season against him necessarily. This is potentially a really talented dude as well.
Yeah, this team they're hard to project for a couple reasons. Last year they finished 27-55 with the dead last offense in the league and the 20th ranked defense, which sneakily was a top 10 or 10, top like I think over the second half of the season they were like a 8th ranked defense or something insane like this. But that was
Okay.
without LaMelo Ball. That was without some of the veterans injured. It was very much like a PJ Washington and Dennis Smith Jr. led kind of revolution. I mean, or just like a lot of like, actually, I think Dennis Smith Jr. was injured for a chunk of that as well. But they were like sneakily finished the season pretty well. But without any of their core pieces. So what do we carry over from that? And then how do we compare that with the fact that the year before this was a top 10 ranked offense and
Mhm.
a 23rd ranked defense in the league, like a really joke level defense. That's like that's a really really weird team. Like Vegas. Everyone wants to base their season predictions something based off of last year's standings. So 27 wins. Are they going to win 6 more games? Are they going to win 2 more games? Are they going to win 5 less games? But like the map, like the data sets are all the data points are all over the map with Charlotte, and you really just kind of have to, I think, have a fresh perspective with this team. The veterans you mentioned, like Terry Rozier and Gordon Hayward, are still there. They are
Yeah,
still
that's
like,
about it in terms of veterans.
yeah, really functional players when they're healthy. Which Gordon Hayward, I don't think he's played more than 50 games in a good long while. Like like not since Boston has he, and ever since that injury in Boston, that really gruesome. I remember I was watching that in the sports. I was sitting in a sports bar. I was the season opener, really excited about Boston's new lineup with Kyrie Irving and Gordon Hayward and Al Horford. And that gruesome injury takes place like on live TV on a huge screen right in front of my face. And it's just like, and he's never really been the same player since, where he was like a rising. He had made it an all-star team for the first year, the year before in Utah. Unexpectedly, his career in Utah was done and things were like looking up in Boston, and that was just not meant to be. And that injury really ended up derailing Boston for kind of stopped that era before it could really take off. But
Yeah.
anyways, we're not talking about Boston, we're talking about Charlotte, and those are those are the two veterans you mentioned. One of the first questions I have, like looking at this roster, lots of young guys. Who do you think's gonna start, and is Brandon Miller going to start?
I do think with a new ownership group that, yeah, probably, because they're just going to be really excited about the future of the team.
Mm-hmm.
With that being said, Steve Clifford is still the coach of this team, and Steve Clifford hates starting young players more than probably any other active coach in the NBA.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll see. But I do think Brandon Miller is talented enough, and Gordon Hayward is, unreliable enough just due to his lack of ability to stay on the court. Miller will start a decent amount this season for sure.
But on opening night, what do you expect the starting lineup to be in Charlotte?
Hmm. I think I might lean in the direction of Steve Clifford's stubbornness and
Mm.
just think that Hayward starts game one. Although I will say Brandon Miller is starting by the end of the year.
Okay. Another couple interesting questions about their starting lineup. So LaMelo Ball, I see as the only definite lock for the starting lineup.
Yeah.
Um, and then I also expect Terry Rozier to start at the other guard spot unless they do something interesting with their positions. Like, like I could see Brandon Miller starting at the two.
Hmm.
Um, to if they wanted to keep Gordon Hayward out there. But then once we get into the big positions, we've got Miles Bridges returning to the team on a qualifying offer, so very much
Yep.
in a sort of like prove it year for both, like, he's not just auditioning for the Hornets, he's auditioning for his next contract anywhere. We don't really know what the relationship is like there. He was kind of stuck with the Hornets, so we can't assume that he didn't sign a long-term contract with them. They wanted to get a deal because of his off the court issues, all pretty reasonable. And then PJ Washington, they still have not signed to a new contract, and he was like, kind of low key their best
Yes.
player last year after LaMelo
But
went down.
yeah, I mean, the mystery of PJ Washington is kind of like the ongoing thing of this offseason. But he is signed to a qualifying offer and he is a restricted free agent. So I don't expect to see him anywhere other than Charlotte. It's just a matter of like how much money and how many years are going to be on that deal.
They really take some of these restricted free agents and like put them through absolute hell, don't they?
Yeah, just in terms of the timeline. It's
Yeah, you just have no power in that situation. It is no fun to be a restricted free agent in the NBA. Like, everyone's like, "Oh, I'm hitting free agency for the first time. Oh, these teams are interested in me. Oh, it's so glamorous." Like, no, you got that restricted tag on you. You are just, I'm maybe using the word purgatory too much, but man, they really trap these kids. Just like, I know the players hate it, right? Like they talk about it, they want it out. And I mean, they obviously, like in this CBA, they tried to get rid of the restricted free agency tag, and they got no traction on that. Who knows what the sort of like different leverage points were there? But yeah, it's just painful. Players have very little control initially leaving the team that drafted on them, which is of course what the NBA and the owners want, is long team control on the prospects they draft, and fans also kind of want that too. I think the
yeah.
CBA actually, with a lot of these new things, is going to restrict player movement a lot more. Like, you're going to have to kind of move hell and high water to get to a new team, and we might enter into like an era not only of like parity but of like cores staying together for a longer time, which could be interesting. But yeah, so if PJ Washington does come back, is Miles Bridges starting at the four? Is PJ Washington starting the four? Is Mark Williams the starting five? Because like Nick Richards got a lot of
I mean,
run
he's
there last
clearly the
year.
most talented center that they have, you know.
Well, depending on what you think about Kai Jones, because I think the Kai Jones problem isn't talent; it's sort of other things. He's actually pretty shocking to watch, like the level of athlete that he
Oh
is,
yeah.
but still, and he is sort of slowly. He had flashes last year where he really looked like an NBA level kind of mobile big, but also that has not been consistent at all. So his development, I think, is another thing to keep an eye on. But right now, Kai Jones is like their third center, so that's not a great place to start.
Yeah, I mean, but like guys are going to get hurt and miss time and be in and out of the doghouse. So I think it's good to have three bigs on the roster. Like you're going to see playing time throughout the year.
Yeah, PJ Washington also played a lot of small ball five for them.
Yep.
Um,
I
that's
mean,
I don't, yeah.
I'll go with PJ Washington probably opening the season starting at the four. I do think he'll be back. Yeah, who knows how long it'll be. I guess with the restricted free agency stuff, like yeah, you are limited if you want a longer term deal. You do have the option to bet on yourself and just take the qualifying offer, play for 1 year. But I understand for a lot of players, that's a risky proposition, right? Because like, who knows if you're going to get hurt um, and lose out on the next payday, right? So I understand a lot of guys don't want to do that, but and I guess I would be surprised if PJ Washington ends up doing that unless the offer from Charlotte is just really bad. So, and then maybe he's back on a 1 year deal as well.
Yeah, imagine that with both their prospective starting forwards are are both on qualifying offers. I mean, Miles Bridges was really, really good last time he played.
Yeah, but it
Um,
was over a year ago. So
yeah. And how old is that man now?
he
He
was
was he
2018 draft. So, I mean, he's still not super old. He was only
20,
a
25? I think he's 25.
1 year player at Michigan State.
Yeah. Also, there's not another player like him on the roster in terms of pairing with LaMelo for just that sort of like pure, really aggressive athletic finisher type. I
Yeah.
think like Mark Williams has some potential there too as a huge mobile body and a rim runner. And I guess, the aforementioned Kai Jones. Oh man, Cody Martin is still on this roster and he does
Hmm.
not look well positioned to like seize a lot of minutes, until the inevitable, I mean, knock on wood, I hope it doesn't happen, but Gordon Hayward
Well,
injury.
I mean, their guard rotation is filled with a lot of young guys, and
Yes.
Frank Tilikina. I
Frank the
always struggle.
Tank.
I always struggle with that name. Not a lot of guys that I see being particularly challenging for Cody Martin to get some minutes. He might be
Yeah.
playing guard more than kind of like one of the wing spots, but we'll see.
And he was injured last year as well. He
Yeah.
somehow, became the lesser. He missed basically the whole season and now has become the lesser of the Martin twins after it being pretty set in stone that
Cody
Cody
was the better
was.
one.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
now Caleb is really leaped ahead in that race. So that's a very exciting subplot for everyone. Is the Martin twin fight for
Well,
supremacy, twin supremacy?
you got to see a Cody comeback season in this case. Like you're
Yeah,
not going to be happy with your twin brother being better than you. So,
and Cody's good. Cody's super super versatile, kind of like not a big wing, but big enough to play.
well, he's the same
Play the forward
size as
part.
Caleb.
Yeah, who played power forward all the way to the NBA Finals, basically. So
Yep.
and his shot had been his shot was kind of coming around the year before. He was like the first, but now Caleb Martin's shot is like, I mean, we just saw it burn holes through the Eastern Conference. So but yeah, anyways, I really like both. It was great to see Caleb break out, and I hope that Cody has a healthy season and gets back to the progress he was making.
Yeah.
I guess we should probably talk a little bit about LaMelo Ball since he's the kind of be all end all of this franchise.
Yeah, let's finish up with the contract and then like kind of what we see for Charlotte going forward. So LaMelo signed a 5 year, 30% of the salary cap max extension with Charlotte this offseason. So about a $200 million deal is what we're looking at. This is the rookie scale max, right? Not the full veteran max. So it's not as much money. It's not as much of the salary cap. It's
30
not.
million instead of 60 million
Yeah.
basically per year.
Yeah, I mean it's a huge difference between like this and what Jalen Brown signed.
Yeah.
So I mean it's a palatable deal even if you're not a Lamelo Ball fan. I personally am a Lamelo Ball fan, kind of like hesitantly, because he's had a couple of experiences in a play-in game now, and those haven't been particularly great showings. And I do feel like the defensive consistency with him really comes and goes. But at the same time, like he's
Does it
obvious.
does it come though? Does the defensive consistency come or does it just
Yes,
go?
no, I will. I'm here to defend Lamelo Ball's like at least potential ability to play defense.
Yeah.
Like he's tall, he's long, he has he's just like one of those guys who just seems to have like really great reflexes and kind of knowledge of what to do with his hands. Um, so yeah, like you have some defensive versatile upside there with him, and obviously offensively he has a lot of tools. So
Yeah, I mean he's a really fascinating player because like the shooting has worked out. There was big questions about his shooting coming into the NBA, but at least so far that has been smooth sailing. And that's a really important part of his game is that he can, get shots off from three. Obviously, he's one of the very best passers in the league, one of the most creative passers. Um, plays at a really interesting pace that can kind of like freeze defenders. Has basically zero game inside the 3-point line. Like he's not an NBA. despite his 6'7" size, like he plays like a much smaller player because he's not really like strong or explosive. He can't kind of like hold position against physical defense, so he has to be a lot more careful. I think the upside on both ends comes from how he fills out. Like we kind of saw it a bit with his brother, like Lonzo for the first couple seasons had major problems physically.
Yeah.
And then, before Lonzo Ball's injuries started really tanking his career, he was flexing a whole lot of I mean, he was one of the best perimeter defenders in the NBA. And he was always a better defender than his little brother. Like he always showed more aptitude for that. But LaMelo does have the same, like you said, kind of like reflexes, anticipation. And if he just kind of gets a little bit stronger inside that like wing sized frame, he could very quickly go from the minus that he is now into a pretty like interesting defensive impact player, I think so. And that will
Yeah.
also help him have a little bit more
Yeah. Just
ability
his
to hold up
ability to
inside the 3 point line.
get to the basket and, yeah, finish when he gets there as well will be
Yeah.
huge.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't quite see this being the year for Charlotte. Like you, I had them finishing outside of the play-in looking in. But like this is a really young team. I mean, I think a lot of the guys that are going to be core for their rotation in the future are still like second or third year players, or a rookie in Brandon Miller's case. Like Brandon Miller is going to be good. Personally, I think very good. Like I think this is a future All Star talent. But like he's a rookie. This is the worst he's ever going to be in his career, likely. So we're probably not going to see it this season.
Well, I don't know. I think the problem with Charlotte is that they've got quite a track record of their rookies having their best season as a rookie and then not really becoming NBA players. I'm still sore over Emeka Okafor and Michael Kidd Gilchrist and Adam Morrison. So hopefully he breaks
Well,
the
two of those guys had major career altering injuries too.
Yeah, it's true. Um, yeah, I know. I think also Brandon, I think it's a good situation for Brandon Miller where he's not gonna like. I think he's gonna be able to play the role right away that he already is able to play.
Mhm.
He's going to be able to take reps on the wing. He's not going to be a primary creator. His shooting is going to be very necessary to unlock lineups, but
Yeah,
like there's probably still going to be plenty of on ball reps available for him again,
I hope
depending
so
on
because
Steve Clifford.
I really do think Brandon Miller is better on ball than he is at just a like come off screens and shoot guy. Like this is not. They did not draft a guy, who's. I mean, Clay Thompson is like a super great version of this, but like they didn't draft him to be the next Clay Thompson. I mean, they drafted him because he showed not a lot, but some kind of high level on ball skills, passing ability. His handle it needs work, to be completely honest. But when he does get a lane to the rim, he improved massively in college at getting there and finishing. So he's a guy who is going to be able to take at least larger and slower defenders off of the dribble and do some things with the ball in his hands.
I think the big thing to watch with him is his physical development because I really think looking at his game, and it is still very dependent on his ability to pull up off the dribble. He's going to need to be able to keep defenders on his hip before he's going to be able to make a lot of those moves work.
Yeah.
Sometimes players come out in the rookie season and they clearly just already took a huge bump in physical development right away, like one summer with like NBA level trainers, changed their body coming out of college. With lots of other players, that's kind of like they develop over the first 3 or 4 years before they get to like the real NBA body they're going to compare with the rest of their career. We've talked Brandon Miller to death. He's probably like the
No,
prospect.
I have one last Brandon Miller thought.
Okay, all right.
One thing I love seeing from Brandon Miller already, like late in his college season and in summer league, is he's doing the thing that we always wanted KD to be able to do, and Durant never figured out. And this is not a Durant comparison, but he's already doing the thing where he's hunching over, he's keeping his handle really low.
Yep.
He's trying to do what he can with a 6'11" frame to become like a valid on ball playmaker.
He's
And
not 6'11". That's a stretch.
okay, 6'10" and 3/4.
Are we talking about Durant or Brandon Miller? Brandon Miller, I know
Brandon
we don't have
Miller.
a measure on, but he's 6'9".
Okay. We we're seeing from Brandon Miller already, like, tall guys often struggle to
Yeah.
develop much of a handle, and he's already taking the steps necessary to become a tall guy who can attack from the perimeter and have the handle to be able to do that.
Yeah. Just kind of wrapping up Charlotte. I do think there is upside in this roster, both on like that there are some stable vets there, as well as some exciting young talent, a bunch of players that could pop off and have big seasons. I think the upside for this team is being a 40-win team that gets into the play-in. I definitely think just a normal healthy season is going to see a big improvement off their 27 wins from last year. They won 27 wins as like a with an absolute skeleton crew. So you have to predict they're going to do a little bit better than that, at least get up into
Oh
the sort
yeah,
of like mid 30s. I do think that they have the upside. Again, it's like a healthy, happy season for the Hornets has them fighting for the play in. Um, Anything less than that probably, bumps them back down kind of into that bottom 3 or 4 range in the East kind of thing. So,
yeah, yep. Excited to see what we have growing in Charlotte.
mm-hmm.